For nearly 200,000 years, our cousins, the Neanderthals, with whom we shared the world, were among the most powerful survival machines nature had ever seen. Compared to them, we Homo sapiens remained physically quite delicate at that time. A Neanderthal's bone density and stocky physique, adapted to the freezing conditions of Ice Age Europe, made them physical giants. However, as these giants withdrew from the stage of history about 40,000 years ago, our species spread across the entire world. The scientific world explains this mystery through the cognitive revolution. This mutation in our minds, occurring about 70,000 years ago, granted us the ability to describe not just the visible, but also the invisible. When our ancestors sat by the fire, they began to interpret and develop stories around the points of light in the sky, seeing them not just as physical objects, but as spiritual forces influencing life. The famous animal depictions found in the Altamira caves in Spain or the Lascaux caves in France, exceeding 30,000 years in age, are the first traces of humanity's effort to sanctify nature. These drawings are not merely hunting records, they are a quest for a connection with a supernatural system that transcends human existence. In this process, humanity constructed a fictional reality. Thanks to this ability, hundreds of strangers who had never met could unite around a shared belief or symbol, forming massive communities. What we call religion evolved as history's oldest and most effective social mechanism, enabling humans to trust one another and organize. For thousands of years, historians believed that religions emerged after the agricultural revolution, driven by the need of sedentary people to establish order. However, excavations started in Sanliurfa in 1995 by the German archaeologist Professor Dr. Klaus Schmidt fundamentally shook this thesis. The massive T-shaped pillars unearthed at Göbeklitepe dated back 12,000 years, to a time before agriculture had even begun. This discovery rewrote the chronology of human history. As Klaus Schmidt noted, the temple came first, then the city. What brought thousands of hunter-gatherers to this desolate hill 12,000 years ago, before a single grain of wheat had been domesticated? The answer lay within an organized ritual center. Transporting these massive stones, weighing up to 40 tons, from kilometers away required a tremendous labor force and a shared belief. The necessity to feed thousands of people coming here led humanity to domesticate wild wheat and move towards systematic production, namely, agriculture. Göbeklitepe is the most tangible evidence of how belief systems shape social life and that, contrary to traditionally accepted narratives, religion was not a result of sedentary life but its very trigger. These structures unearthed by Schmidt represent that critical threshold where the human mind detached from nature and began to construct its own cultural and metaphysical world. At the point where history begins with writing, in Mesopotamia, the Sumerians took the world of belief to an entirely different dimension. At this juncture, the work of our world-renowned Sumerologist Muazzez İlmiye Çığ, who dedicated her life to deciphering Sumerian tablets, serves as a unique beacon for understanding the origins of today's belief systems. Çığ's research shows us that the flood stories, creation myths, and even many religious symbols found in sacred texts today echoed in Sumerian temples and ziggurats thousands of years ago. The Sumerians attempted to order the universe by personalizing natural phenomena with gods like Enlil, Enki, and Anu. As Muazzez İlmiye Çığ emphasizes, creation epics like Enuma Elish, carved onto clay tablets by Sumerian priests, are actually the first literary documents of humanity's existential struggle. The transition from this polytheistic system to monotheistic tendencies based on the war between good and evil, which would later crystallize with Zoroaster in Persian lands, is essentially the transfer of a cultural heritage. Science and archaeology whisper to us that no belief system was born in a vacuum. They were all built upon thousands of years of accumulation, on those first stones in Göbeklitepe and those first tablets in Sumer. This journey proves to us that beliefs are not static, rather, they are a massive river that constantly flows and changes form along with human civilization. Following the polytheistic pantheons of Mesopotamia, human history entered a philosophical turning point that was far more profound. About 3,500 years ago, in the region we now know as Iran, a thinker and spiritual leader named Zoroaster initiated one of the greatest mental revolutions in human history. Rejecting the complex hierarchy of gods that had prevailed until then, Zoroaster built the universe upon two fundamental forces, Ahura Mazda, the absolute good, and Ahriman, the absolute evil. This is the first moment in history when the concept of the war between good and evil, which we take for granted in modern belief systems today, was systematically recorded. Zoroastrianism was not just a belief system but also a moral code. Humans had to choose between these two forces. With this faith, concepts such as heaven, Vahishta Ahu, hell, the bridge to the afterlife, Chinvat Bridge, and Judgment Day, were etched into human memory with such clear definitions for the first time. The Avesta, the sacred text of Zoroaster, described the universe moving toward a great reckoning within a finite time frame. This religious architecture would form the fundamental building blocks of the monotheistic traditions that would stretch from Mesopotamia to the Mediterranean coasts in the following centuries. The philosophy of good thoughts, good words, good deeds, in Zoroaster's teachings represented that critical threshold where humans detached from wild nature and began to develop a conscience. Archaeological findings and linguistic studies clearly reveal how this deep-rooted heritage filtered across geographies and settled into our cultural DNA today. Another massive stop in the evolution of beliefs was the banks of the Nile, ancient Egypt. For thousands of years, pharaohs and priests treated the journey of the soul and immortality with the world's most complex rituals. However, in the 1350s BC, Pharaoh Amenhotep IV, known to history as Akhenaten, took a radical step by rejecting all gods and ordering the worship of only the sun disk, Aten. This is considered one of the first recorded monotheistic attempts in history. Although the old polytheistic system was restored after Akhenaten's death, the idea of a single creator had now become a part of the human mind. As Muazzez İlmiye Çığ emphasizes at this point, no idea, no story, and no belief was born from scratch by rejecting the heritage that preceded it. The Sumerian flood, the Zoroastrian apocalypse, and the Egyptian spiritual judgment were blended over centuries to transform into today's universal narratives. From a scientific perspective, the process from the erection of those first stones at Göbeklitepe 12,000 years ago to the last seal struck by Sumerian scribes on clay tablets is, in fact, a continuous chronology of humanity's effort to understand and interpret the universe. Most of the ethical values, social rules, and even the symbols we use in daily language today are the fruits of thousands of years of cultural evolution. History whispers to us, we are not just the people of today, but also the heirs of 12,000 years of imagination and searching. Dear friends, today on Behind the Norm, we witness the breaking of a 12,000-year silence in the deepest corners of the human mind. We saw that religions and beliefs did not sprout in a vacuum, suddenly and without roots. On the contrary, from the first bison figure drawn with trembling hands in those dark caves of Spain to the first prayers carved into clay with cuneiform by a Sumerian priest, everything was a link in a massive chain. Those tablets to which Muazzez İlmiye Çığ dedicated her life, and those massive T-shaped pillars Klaus Schmidt unearthed at Göbeklitepe, scream a single truth: we are a species that survived by transforming its fears into stories. Beliefs changed, the names of gods were altered, the architecture of temples evolved, but humanity's search for meaning never changed. Many ethical values and social rules we accept as normal today are actually hidden in Zoroaster's distinction between good and evil, or in Akhenaten's gaze at the sun disk thousands of years ago. In this video, we didn't just tell history, we tracked the mental genetics of today's modern human. Perhaps the universe's greatest mystery is not in the sky, but in the depths of the human mind that looks at those stars and develops meanings for itself. Remember, every symbol that seems lost among the dusty pages of history is still a cultural heritage flowing through our veins today. Until we meet in the next episode to discover another truth behind the norms. Stay curious.